Okay, so that leads us to our expression for the day. And the expression for the day is the word milestones. So everyone, let's say that word together, milestones. Okay. Now, milestones, the reason I chose this word, this particular word, is in thinking about getting married, many people see getting married as a milestone of their lives. So, in other words, an important event that most people do experience. Now, again, as we saw from some of the information, uh, fewer and fewer people are getting married, but the truth is it's still an experience that the majority of people in the United States, for example, they still experience. Again, it's not as much as it used to be. But there are other milestones too in our lives, such as graduating from school, so that's kind of our going to be our discussion here in just a moment, is thinking about what milestones do we have in our lives. And again, some of it might be cultural. Some of it might be, of course, experiences that we all share. If you look here on the screen, you will see that this is actually what a milestone is. So if you see the picture there on the screen, so basically a milestone is how people used to measure distance between cities. So if you think about today, we've got signs on the highway that tell you how many miles is the next exit and so on. So in this case, a milestone actually comes from the Latin word milarium, which is referring to miles. Remember, here in in the United States and in England, for example, they used miles to measure distance. Um, so in this case, a milestone would basically tell you how many miles are you from your destination. This one is from England. Some of you may know that the Roman Empire actually occupied England for quite a while in the early part of the AD era. So, but if you notice here, so I'm circling there. Lancaster is a city, and then I think Garstang is the other city listed there. And they tell you how many miles, and of course these are in Roman numerals. So, for example, VI that you see there for Lancaster, that means 6. So in this case, it was 6 miles to Lancaster at this particular destination. So again, a milestone in the old days was basically a stone that you would see that would measure distance. So now we use the expression to talk about those important events that kind of mark our lives, just like mile markers mark our lives. So what I'd like to do here, and this is a good chance for us to, again, we can use our microphones for this next one, but the idea is, what kind of milestones do we have in other parts of our lives? So that's what we're going to be looking at for our chat question for the day. So here it is. What are some other milestones that people observe in their lives? So we're going to look at the next page, and we're going to see different age groups. And what I want us to think about, even for babies, babies have milestones too. Children, as they get older, they have milestones. So it's not just about adults, right? It's not just about graduating high school. Basically, every age group has important milestones. So let's look on the next screen. And what I'm going to do is just kind of, I'll type out some of your suggestions, okay? All right, so here's the next screen. Let's see if I can make it bigger. All right, good. Okay, so everybody, you can turn your mics on if you like to share with us. So let's think first about, what milestones do children have from ages 0 to 5? What are some important things that children learn during this time? Who would like to tell us? What do you think? Rena, what's an important milestone for children at these ages?
Oh, born
Well,
before.
Rena, they don't really control that, do they? So, but for example, like children learning to walk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a big milestone.
Okay. And first eat.
First, like eating what? First,
eating the solid
I like that.
food.
Okay, so learning to eat solid food. Okay, that's a good one. All right, who's got another one from 0 to 5?
Maybe try to have to touch everything in order to know what it is.
Okay, now that's more of just a common experience, but what exactly do they learn in that process? So for example, like they learn to walk, they learn to eat solid food. So maybe by touching they learn what? To speak, maybe to communicate?
Maybe they, when they touch things which is dangerous, they know that is dangerous,
Okay.
like electricity, like to jump from the wall to from up to down.
Okay, okay. So again,
Maybe.
I think we could put, for example, learning about the world. Yeah, we kind of thinking about the senses. Okay, sensory exploration. Okay. I think many of us would probably agree that another milestone is learning to talk. That's certainly a milestone. Oops. Okay. I'll move this up a little bit. All right. Okay. All right. Let's move on to 6 to 12. What are some milestones that children go through at these ages?
Going school first time.
Okay. So going to school first time. Okay.
Take off they take off their teeth.
Say it again.
They take off their tooth. In his mouth there is teeth.
I think you mean lose their teeth.
Yeah, they lose their teeth. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, maybe first. Let's say losing first tooth.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, losing the first tooth might be a milestone.
Yeah.
Okay, what about things that kids learn at these ages? Think about, again, those important milestones that we learn.
Group or session learning.
Let's be more specific, Shiho. Like, what specifically do they learn? What particular things do they learn?
How to spend with your friend.
Okay, so yeah, learning how to communicate with other people. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe how to write.
That's what I was thinking. How to learn letters. Okay, so learning
Yeah.
letters. Again, I think about other things they learn. What else do children learn? So maybe numbers, how to count, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, any others? Think about all the things they learn to do, like at home.
How to brush their teeth.
There you go. Yeah, so learning how to brush teeth, dress themselves.
How to
Yeah.
clean their room.
Okay, cleaning, tying shoes. That's a big one.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you tied your shoe?
No.
No.
I don't remember the first time I tied my shoe, but I do remember the first time I learned how to whistle. You know,
Oh.
yeah, like that. I remember that very first time, and I was so excited. So maybe that was a big one, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So obviously school, Mia mentioned going to school. That's a big part of life. So again, those milestones of maybe here in America, for example, taking the bus for the first time. Yeah. Going to school by yourself. All of these things are big milestones. Okay. Now let's think about the teenage years. So 13 to 19. What are some milestones? And again, we have to remember a milestone is something that you accomplish or achieve. So again, you know, think about things we accomplish, things that we do between 13 and 19. What are some other milestones?
Oh, against the parents and then get along with them.
Okay. Again,
Is that-
I don't know if that's a milestone. Again, a milestone is something that we kind of accomplish. We do. So like
Okay.
going to school for the first time. Now, Rena, let's think about things that are important to teenagers. So for example, learning to drive.
Yes.
Yeah, getting like the driver's license. That might be considered a milestone. Okay. Who's got another one?
To go out to store and to get their clothes by themselves.
Okay, so for example, now Saba, before that happens, maybe we could also say like getting a job for the first time. A lot of teenagers, that's a big thing.
Yeah, yeah, especially in USA, but in our country, no.
Yeah, so that could be something to think about. Now, this might be connected to what Rena said. So maybe that first
Yeah.
independent action, like you said,
Action, yeah.
maybe going to the mall by yourself or going to a store by
Yeah,
yourself. Okay.
Mhm,
Yeah, so I think
mhm.
those would qualify. Yeah, so doing something independently for the first time. Here in America, I also think about voting. You know, at 18, you can vote.
Oh, yeah.
I think about, of course, graduating school. Usually 18, we graduate. Okay. Okay.
And how about win or lose the competition or
Well,
some?
well, for example, Rena, I think we could say, for example, between 6 and 12, kids learn a lot about competition. So yeah, maybe between those ages, we mentioned communicate. So yeah, maybe from 6 to 12, we could say learning about competition. So yeah, I think children, especially here in America. Now, again, I don't know in Japan, but here in America, you notice we like competition. We have competition a lot. So I think even children before 12, they learn about competition. But yeah, so maybe
see.
competing for the first time. Yeah. Okay, so graduating. Okay. All right, let's look over on the right side. So from 21 to 35, and that's probably most of the people in this group, right? So what are some milestones maybe between 21 and 35?
Marriage.
Yeah, so maybe getting married.
They go out to live with their friends. They
Okay,
leave their houses, their houses,
okay, so maybe we
their
can
parents.
so maybe living independently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so getting their first apartment, first house. Okay.
Mhm.
Work.
Okay. That's
Graduating university.
yeah, maybe graduating university, maybe getting that first real job.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, graduating university. Here in the United States, 21 is the drinking age. Now, let's be honest. Most teenagers have probably had alcohol before they were 21, but we could say drinking alcohol legally by 21. So we could say that, of course. Okay, what about 36 to 44? What could be some other milestones?
Learning parent.
Maybe becoming a parent,
Yeah, become.
which of course could be part of the 21 to 35 group too. Right? Yeah. We hope, yeah.
To improve himself in his job.
Okay, so again, maybe we could say career advancement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, maybe getting the promotions,
Yeah.
learning new skills. Okay.
Maybe to be a director or.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully promotion. We think about getting higher in a job. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so if you notice, guys, take a look. From ages 0 to 19, we have lots of milestones, don't we? Lots and lots and lots of them. But as we get older, those milestones tend to get fewer and fewer. And partially because, a lot of our middle age is spent, working and trying to build a family. So we don't have as many of those kinds of milestones that you might have, because a lot of our life in the beginning is around school, around family. But as we get older, then it becomes a different thing. Okay, now I didn't put anything beyond 65, but what do we think from 45 to 65? What might be some milestones there?
Being grandparent.
Okay, possibly, yeah, becoming a grandparent. Could be
It's
one.
sad one, but parents. It's sad one, sad thing, but parents passed away. Parents over
Well, certainly,
grandmother.
yeah.
Is
So,
that-
well, it's again a milestone is usually something we accomplish. So I think, again, yeah, so for example, people dying in our lives, that kind of just happens. So we don't exactly accomplish those things. So, but I do think, for example, we can think, Rena, about, adjusting to a new life. So for example, a lot of people might retire during those
I
ages.
see.
Yeah, something like that. But again, usually when you mention being born and dying, that's just part of life. I think we can't really control those things. And I don't think many of us want to say, oh, how many years until we die, right? But in this case, usually milestones are things we do. We do these things. So in this case, unfortunately, yeah, I don't think dying would be one of them. But again, maybe retiring would be one.
Maybe thinking about a long travel.
Okay, moving to a new place. Perhaps, yeah, maybe traveling, though I think many of us would agree that travel is something we could do at many of these other stages, like traveling to the other countries, traveling to other places. That can happen really at any age, but yeah, maybe more traveling. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, pretty much from 45 to 65, our milestones are probably much more thinking about the end of something and beginning something else. So yeah, grandparents, for example, retiring. So yeah, as you can see, the milestones that we have in our lives, again, I think so much of our early life is thinking about school, is thinking about development, and those particular things that we all share. But as we get older, you can see those milestones may or may not happen. Again, for example, getting married, that's starting to change a little bit. Graduating university, again, not everyone shares those, but many people do. Becoming parents, career advancement. These things are very much now much more based on your choices, right? So again, if you look over on the left side, so much of this is, your parents helping you, school helping you. But as you get older, those milestones get fewer and fewer. But in this case, again, I think you guys have a pretty good list there. Now, before we move on to think about milestones, like we said before, milestones are things that we generally accomplish. So that's why I want you to think about that these particular events are things that we do. We experience them, but that's because we are accomplishing these things. So that's why we use milestones in this way to kind of mark time. So again, hopefully you're thinking about what are some important milestones in your life. What are some important things? And maybe you could say, for example, coming to the United States is an important milestone in your life. So in this case, yeah, moving to a new country, moving to new places, those are milestones too. All right. Well, guys, that's our new expression for the day. So thinking about the milestones we all experience. So I think in this case, you could even think about specifically in your countries. Are there some milestones that happen in your countries that maybe we don't necessarily have in the United States?
Oh, I think in Japan, 100 after 100 after be born,
Yeah.
100 bytes day. We have 100 bytes day.
What is that?
Actually, I don't know the detail, but after a 100 days ceremony.
Oh, okay, I see.
But
So like,
I'm not sure American people also have or not.
well, I don't think so. No, but I think like Americans will often celebrate, like for example, when they use children's ages, they'll often use months at the beginning of their lives. My child is 15 months, 20 months, up until maybe 2 years old. A lot of people might use months to mark those special days, or the first birthday. For example, I think a child's first birthday is usually a pretty important event. Now, is that a milestone? I don't know, but I guess it could be. Yeah. Now, here, for example, in the United States, we have like the Sweet 16 birthday party for people turning 16. That seems to be a pretty important date. I was putting in the chat box in some Latin American countries. There's what's called the Sweet 15 birthday for young girls, especially. If you think about religions, different religious beliefs, Like, for example, if you're Catholic, there are lots of milestones. So, for example, one particular Catholic event, which usually happens here in Northern Kentucky, you know, a lot of people are Catholic. I put in the chat box there, there's an event called confirmation. So usually when children turn 12, 11, 12 years old, they often sort of get confirmed in the church. You know, now they're, kind of a religious identity here in the Catholic Church. Or for a lot of people who are, again, religious, we think of their first baptism when they're baptized for the first time. So again, are there any other events you guys can think of? Saba, what about in your country? Are there some special religious events that
Yeah,
you want me to go through?
Like when we have a baby, we celebrate on 7th day.
Okay.
A summer ceremony, a great summer ceremony, and we gave him or her a name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we dance.
Okay, so yeah, so celebrations, for example, can often be important events. Yeah. So again, generally we think of milestones as things that we do, things we accomplish. But again, there are, of course, also important events. Like you said, birthdays, for example, can be important ones. And we think about, especially in Japan now, we think about people turning 100, right? Here in America, that's become a very popular thing to celebrate someone's 100th birthday.
And we also celebrate the adult ceremony when we were 20 years old.
Okay, so that would be an important celebration as well. Yeah, here in America, of course, it's 21, so that's an important one too. Okay, well, guys, let's go ahead and move on in our lesson here. So last week we introduced the idea of word families, and especially looking at irregular forms. Unfortunately, I ran out of time last week, so I'm going to go through these next couple of slides kind of quickly. I hope you do remember this information. If not, you can always go back and watch the video from our last session. But if you remember last week, I mentioned that one of the reasons why English is so crazy is because English changed a lot over time. So what I was showing last week is that many of the words from thinking about health, thinking about the body, why many of these words are kind of strange and unusual is because these particular words came from a time of English when it was very different from the English we speak today. So for example, I mentioned last week that some of the words involving health and our body come from what we call the Old English period. So we're going to go back and revisit some of that information here. But if you remember, we mentioned that English developed in basically 4 different stages. So we have Old English, which was began about 1,500 years ago or so. And then we have the Middle English period. Some of you might remember that's when we borrowed lots of words from French, from Latin, and that's when English really began to change. And then finally, we have what are called the Modern English periods. Now, some people still believe there's only one kind of modern English, but honestly, I think I agree that there is what we call a late modern English, which is very different, I think, even from like the language of Shakespeare. You might remember we mentioned Shakespeare. You know, most people read Shakespeare today and they're still pretty confused. So early modern English is really when we think of Shakespeare and helping develop language. And then the modern English that we speak today, very much influenced by technology, very much influenced by the United States and England and other English-speaking countries becoming very, very, very important in the world. But again, let's go back to that Old English just for a moment. And so what we did last week is I just mentioned that one of the reasons why English is so crazy, so that's something I just wanted to revisit just for a moment, is because English is not a language that has changed in terms of spelling, at least not a lot. So if you remember last week, we said English was a historical language. Now, what that means is that we keep much of the history of our language in our spelling, but not in the way we speak. So again, oftentimes you can look at words and say, if it's a really crazy spelling, if the word looks very crazy compared to its pronunciation, that's probably because that word is very old. So that's why I wanted to just take a moment to tell everybody that many of the older words in English came to us from those Old English period, that Germanic period of English. So that's why I wanted to just revisit this information, is because many of the words relating to the body and other physical characteristics come to us from this older English, okay? Now, real quickly, I just want to go back and review very quickly. So guys, you can just practice here, just there at home. Let's say these words again, because again, a lot of these words are these kind of Old English words. So let's say this again, height, height. Okay, so again, height is talking about how tall we are. So again, the noun form is height. The verb form was kind of created a little later, so the word is heighten. Now, of course, heighten sounds like, can you make somebody taller? Can I heighten you, for example? And of course, that's crazy. I can't make you taller. So in this case, the word heighten actually has a different meaning. It means to make something taller, but obviously you can't make a person taller. I can heighten the doorway. I can heighten a wall, for example. Like if I'm hanging a picture, I can heighten the picture on the wall. So I can make something higher, right? But I can't really make something taller. Let's say the adjective word again, high, high. For example, high cholesterol, right? High blood pressure. This is something we practiced in our speaking activities last week. Okay, and then our adverb, again, is the word highly. But again, I put it in parentheses because we often use it to be like a lot. So if I say, for example, we mentioned COVID-19 is highly contagious, right? Highly contagious, like very contagious, very dangerous. So the word highly, highly dangerous, basically means like very. So again, the word height is referring to how tall we are, okay? All right, let's say the next one together. Weigh, weigh. Now, again, this is where English is very crazy. How come we say weigh and not why? If you think about it, the spelling, if you look at height, right, it uses that E-I-G-H-T, which actually looks like the word eight. But here we pronounce it with an I sound, height, right? So for example, it sounds just like the word by, like by or B-Y. So it sounds crazy. But remember, this type of English is an older English. So in this case, the word height is going to sound different from the word weight. Okay, so let's say these words again. Let's start with the noun. So let's say it, weight, weigh, okay? And then most likely there are not other family members for this particular word. Now, for example, if you go to the dictionary, you might see this adjective weighable. But honestly, I don't think this is a kind of a real word that you would find necessarily that people use as a word family member. We could use able. We could put able on anything and it would become a word, right? So for example, one of my favorite words is the word doable. So for example, if I said to, my wife always asks me, if I'm fixing something around the house, she might say, "Is this project doable? Like, can I fix it? Can I do it?" And of course, usually my answer is no, I'm too lazy. But the idea is, if something is doable, it means we can do it. Yeah. So if something is weighable, that means we can weigh it. But again, is that really a real word? Probably, well, probably not a word that we would find like in the dictionary. It's kind of a created word. We kind of invented this word. But again, the word weight, that's the word I wanted us to think about. So weight and weigh are going to sound different. Okay. All right, let's go to the next word. So again, the next word we looked at last week was the word strength. Everyone, let's say that word, strength. Okay. Now this word is very strange, and in fact it shows you how English used to be a very different language. So the noun strength, you probably are more familiar with the word strong, the adjective strong. But believe it or not, these words are related. So yes, you're probably much more familiar with the word strong. So thinking about, are you strong, or like muscles, for example. But believe it or not, that word comes from the noun strength. The verb, again, strengthen. To strengthen something means to make something stronger. So often we strengthen, for example, we can strengthen our muscles, right? We can exercise and strengthen our muscles. But again, the word strong actually comes from the word strength. And then the adverb that we use, strongly. Now, again, we use the word strongly kind of in the same way that we use very. So if I say, I strongly disagree, like I do not agree with you, I strongly disagree. It's like kind of like I very much disagree with you. Okay, so there's that family. Strength, strengthen, strong, and strongly. Okay, all right, and we got one more. And that is the opposite word, which is the word weak. Now again, if you notice, the root word of weak is here. Okay, so that is the root of this family. And then notice how we create the other members of the family. For example, we have weakness. Okay, you guys say it there, weakness. Weaken, so weaken means to make something weaker. Okay, weak as the adjective. And finally, weakly. Now, weakly, of course, would be the opposite of strongly. So if to do something weakly means to not really be very confident, so not so strong. So if I said he weakly disagrees, that means he doesn't really disagree very strongly, okay? Not very much. So again, as you can see, all of these examples are kind of crazy, right? The spellings are crazy. For example, you notice with weak, we have weakness, right? Do you see this word? Now, before we move on, I was curious, guys. You can use the chat box or you can use the microphone. Can you think of some other words that use the ness ending, the N-E-S-S ending? So, for example, weakness is one. Can you guys think of some other words that use ness at the end?
Kindness.
Kindness. Good. Can someone think of another one?
Goodness.
Okay.
Darkness.
Darkness. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Here's the next one. H-A-P.
Happiness.
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 Yeah, everybody knows now. Okay. How about this one? When we're feeling bad, S-I.
Sickness.
Sickness, yeah. Sadness, so yeah, the opposite of happiness. Now, so Mie, looking at all of these words, kindness, goodness, darkness,
Jobless.
job, well, that would be less.
Yeah.
That would be less, right? That would be
Mhm.
L-E-S-S, but good guess. But Mie, looking at all of these words, what can you guess about all of these words?
Adjective.
What do you think?
First thing is adjective. Always adjective.
Well, for example, the root words would be adjectives,
words,
right?
yeah.
Kind, good, dark. What's the root word for happiness?
Happy.
Happy, yeah. So notice the spelling changes, okay. What about sickness?
Sick.
Sick. And sadness?
Sad.
Sad, yeah. So in this case, they all follow the same pattern as weakness, okay. So that's one thing we can learn from these words. Can anybody tell me something else that they all share, that they're probably similar?
Soreness.
Yeah, that would be another one. But what do you think all of these words share?
Is this feeling?
Yes. Some of them are. Yeah, some of them are. Okay, but actually I was thinking about this. If you think about the type of words we've been looking at here. So again, we said that these words like strength and weak and all of these words came from Old English. What do you think about these words? Do you think many of these words might be old words? What do you think? You have a 50-50 guess, yes or no?
No.
I think yes.
All right, so we've got We've got two opposite sides here. Okay, well, Rena, congratulations. You are correct. Yeah, so again, what I'm trying to show you is often we can make guesses about words in English. Now, they're not always going to be correct, but in this case, many of these words are probably old English words. So that tells me, for example, when I see ness, N-E-S-S, this was probably a suffix from older English that we kind of borrowed. That we use in English today, but that these are particular endings that were probably part of that older English that we used. Yeah, so again, many of those words, so Rena mentioned feelings, for example. Yeah, feelings are very basic things. They're old things when you think about expressing how you feel. So words like sad and happy, sick, right? You feel weak. Guess what? These are old words. Now, think about your language. Many of the words from your language, think about the words you use every day. Oftentimes, the words we use every day in language often are kind of the stranger or irregular words. Now, again, I'm thinking of a language like Spanish, for example. Many of the older or more common words had kind of crazier spellings. But for English, I just want you guys to think about this. As you're learning more things about English, oftentimes we can look and see like ness, N-E-S-S, that probably tells me that these are older words in English. And these are words that we kind of kept into the English language. Now, again, I am not a historian, so I cannot tell you exactly kindness, goodness, darkness, and so on, if all of these are Old English words, but I can tell you that I know most of them are. So in this case, that tells you something. Ness was an Old English, perhaps Germanic or some other, but it was an Old English suffix. And if you notice too, guys, the en that you see here, weaken, strengthen, this was also an Old English suffix. So again, it shows you that English used to be different, and that's why English is so crazy. Okay, now I don't expect you guys to be, experts or historians in the English language. I'm not, but I have learned a lot by teaching students. And what I realize is sometimes if we help students understand that English has had a very different kind of strange history, students begin to understand now that this is why English is so crazy. So hopefully that's helping you in thinking about this. Okay, so Serena, I think your observation is correct. Most of these feelings are probably older words because these are words that we've used through much of our history. And finally, these kinds of suffixes, ness and en, we think of these as probably older. So guess what? You've learned a little bit of history here today. And you did it for free, so I charged you no money. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at this this next screen, just to kind of continue our discussion about Old English. So everybody, if you can look on the screen, and I apologize, I still don't know why Google Slides is doing this, but everybody look at the words on the screen. All of these words are words that came to us from our older English past. Now, look at how many of these words involve everyday things, and how many of these words talk about parts of the body. Okay, you guys, let's say these together. You want to? So just practice there at home. Here we go. Eye, leg, foot, skin, head, hand, hair. Sorry, you can't see it there at the bottom, but that word is hair. On the right side, egg, kid, the words husband, wife, there it is, happy, get. Now you know why we use get so much in English. It's an old word. Sail, everyone likes this word, right? And then finally, believe it or not, all of the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, these were all words that came to us in our language from older English. Now, before we leave this screen, you probably notice some of these words have some very strange changes. For example, can somebody tell me what is the plural of the word foot?
Feet.
Congratulations. Okay, now, for example, the word tooth.
Teeth.
Yeah, so now, Saba,
Yes.
so you get to be a detective. You get to be a history. What does this tell you about the word tooth? What does this tell you about this word tooth? What do you think? So I have foot, feet, right? Old English word. So what about tooth? What do you think about tooth? All right, Saba, you got a guess?
No, I don't know.
Well, notice we don't say tooths, right? We say teeth. That's kind of strange, isn't it? That's kind of crazy.
Yes.
So what does that tell you about the word tooth?
It's old.
Congratulations. So Raina's there to help us. Yeah, if you notice, because the plural is not using the letter S, notice that we have a few of those words in English, don't we? Foot, feet, tooth, teeth. You're probably wondering why. Why does English have these? Well, that's because in older English, we used to make things plural in a different way. For example, I put the word kid here. Kid is kind of a simple word, but here's another word. Do we know this word?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Child.
How do you make it plural?
Children.
Yeah, notice we don't say childs. We say children, right? Okay, Saba, here's your second chance. What can you say about the word child?
Is old.
Congratulations. Yes, it's an older word. So again, many of these words that have these crazy plurals like child, children, foot, feet, tooth, teeth, these kinds of words, these are kind of older words in English, right? So anyway, just to kind of think about, excuse me just a second, our phone is ringing here. It's hard sometimes when you're teaching at home. So I just wanted to show you that that's why some of these words, we still have some of these words in English, is because they're old and we just didn't change them. So in this case, that's why foot is feet, right? And tooth is teeth and child is children. Okay? Okay. Now, we got one activity here before we get close to our finish. So guys, on the next screen, here's what I'd like for you to do. Okay, so I have here on the screen our next activity here. I don't know why I can't make this disappear. Okay. All right, maybe you can see it a little better there. Okay, so for example, here on the screen, I've got a quick little activity. So guys, what I'd like for you to do right now is I'm going to ask different people to read the sentence, and I want you to tell me which word would you choose. So Asami, you get to read number 1 and tell us which one would you choose.
Number 1, how much do you weigh?
Okay. All right. Congratulations. All right. Let's see. Saba, how about you try number 2?
How high are you? How tall are you?
Uh-huh. And what about the second part?
What is your weight? No. What is your heightly?
Which one? The first or the second one?
I think the first.
Yeah. So I wanted to point this out because this is one of those crazy situations in English. When we talk about people, we don't use the word high. We use the word tall. But when we use it as a noun, we say, what is your height? Now, if you say, Mr. John, why do we do this? My answer is, I don't know, because English is crazy. So in this case, we use the word tall for people, but we usually use the word high, like planes, for example, flying in the sky. But when we ask about you as a person, we say, what is your height?
Yes, that make us confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this is showing you how crazy English is. Okay.
But I think by reading, by experience, we can get it.
Well, and now you can see, of course, that's why it's so crazy. For some reason, the word high, we don't use with people. We don't use that. We use the word tall. Yeah. So I don't know why. All right. How about Mie? How about you try number 3?
You are very strong.
Okay, very good. So strong is describing somebody, right? Okay, how about Rena, number 4?
I'm sorry, I can't go to school today. I feel very weak.
Okay, very good. Okay, and then Shiho, let's see if I can make the screen appear here for the last one.
She has trouble speaking English. It is hard.
Let me see if I
see.
can. I know, unfortunately, I don't know why. Can you see that now?
Yeah, it is hard. It is her weakness.
Very good. Yeah, this one I was trying to trick you with which word, strength or weakness. So in this case, yes, it's her weakness. So again, guys, when you think about the things you do well, you can say these are my strengths. If you think about the things we don't do well, we can say our weakness. So hopefully English is not your weakness right now. But anyway, in this case, I wanted to practice a little bit with these words. Okay, so once again, a lot of these words, as you can see, referring to the body, when we go to the doctor, a lot of these words are these old English words, and they are kind of crazy. Okay. All right, now guys, we got just a couple of minutes. So what I wanted to do really quickly is to kind of go back. So I'm going to move on here into our Burlington English, and that is the prescription label activity. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to finish the activity, but I was going to bring up one quick activity here on the screen. So can everyone see that on the screen? Okay. All right, so for example, one of the activities you're going to do this week is kind of reviewing a little bit of vocabulary. So for example, everyone, you guys can help me with this activity. So over on the left side, I have the beginning of the sentence or the first sentence. And then on the right side, we're going to choose which one is the kind of correct response. So for example, number 1 says, this medicine expires by January 2025. Now look over on the right side. Is it going to be answer A, B, C, D, E, or F? Which one do you think?
A.
So it's not safe to use after that.
A.
Let's see. You are correct. Okay. All right. Number 2, always keep medicine out of reach of children.
E.
E.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Congratulations. Keep it high shelf in a closet. Number 3, some medicine causes dizziness.
B. B.
Okay. I hear B and I hear something else. Okay, well, let's see. Yes, it is B. Dizziness means it feels like you're going to fall. All right, number 4, some medicine comes with a refill.
T.
I don't think there's a T.
F.
Maybe F?
F.
Okay.
I think F.
Yeah, there you go. That's like when you ask somebody, how old are you? And they say yes. That's not exactly an answer. Okay, number 5, store the medicine in a dry place.
C.
Okay, so don't leave it near the
It's
sink.
C.
Okay, there we go. And finally, sometimes you need to consult with your doctor.
D.
D.
That one's easy there. Yeah, so we got make an appointment. Yeah, so again, some of the vocabulary words. So what I want to do, again, hopefully you've had a chance to finish the activity for this week, but let's go ahead and talk about our homework. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back on the screen here. So what I have done for homework is I've created just a little review activity, and it's going to be basically reviewing all of the information from this lesson. So reading a prescription medicine label. So what I'm going to do is in your email this afternoon, I'm going to send you a link to the activity. And basically the activity is just going to review all of the information you practiced in the lesson. So the idea is you'll be practicing with a medicine label. You'll be practicing with some instructions about taking medication. And then the last part of the activity will be reviewing some of those vocabulary words that we just looked at. So I will post the activity this afternoon, and please try to finish it before next Tuesday. It will not take you very long, but still it'll be a good chance for you to review. And if you have not had a chance to finish the Burlington English activity, hopefully you can finish that activity too. Okay? All right, now guys, just to get everybody prepared here, we're almost to the end of the summer session. I know you're sad, but the idea here is we're going to continue with two more sessions, two more low intermediate chats. So the next chat will be next Tuesday, June 30th, and then the final chat for the summer will be Tuesday, July 7th. Now, on the July 7th meeting, we will be talking about how classes are going to be in the fall. I'm going to tell you right now that we are going to be online at least until October, probably until December. So we are going to make a few changes, not many, but a few changes. But we are going to share some of that information with you guys in July. So.